pay, but it should be fair and it should be proportionate. So assuming that we're successful in having that Senate approach, which I think was better on the fee, then I'll be able to fully support the bill. But what I was doing in my no vote was making a protest on behalf of this strange situation where the $43 billion company pays $1,000, the $600,000 company pays $1,000.
Let's get back to the phones. Norma in Syracuse, New York, on the Democrats line. Hi there.
Yes, hello. Please, I'm 82 years old. Please don't cut me off. I remember Senator Dick Durbin speaking on this issue on the Senate floor until he was blue in the face. And this is what he said. How can you issue credit cards to college students who have no means of paying the debt they would incur? Republicans voted to give credit card companies carte blanche. Consequently, these credit card companies set up shop on college campuses all across the country. And they also issued multiple credit cards to millions and millions of Americans who used them to get into mountains of debt.
We'll leave it there.
Well, Norma, I'm going to see Senator Durbin tomorrow when I'm with Chairman Bernanke, and I'm going to tell him that Norma was a real close student of his speech, because that's right. I mean, the credit card companies were just peddling the credit cards to anybody and everybody. And, you know, I have a credit card, and they're convenient. They're good things. But you have to have the ability to pay back the charges if you're going to use credit, whether you're getting a mortgage or you're buying groceries. You know, there has to be a connection between the use of credit and the ability and the willingness to pay it back. But what happened with the credit card companies is that they didn't particularly care whether you paid it back, because as long as they had the ability to keep raising prices and fees, somewhat like the caller from Vermont indicated, they could just pass the cost of default onto you and me. Everyone who was actually using the credit card properly, paying it back, ended up seeing their rates inflated, the interest charges, the fees, in order to cover the losses, because the credit card issuers did not act responsibly when it came to whom they issued the credit card. So you've got a good point. Senator Durbin's been a real champion on this, and I'm going to tell him Norma really picked up on his speech.
Bella Vista, Arkansas. Charles, Republicans line.
Good morning. Peter, you tell Mr. Durbin for me that basically, as far as students go, if they're too stupid to get a credit card that they can't pay back, that's the student's fault. And by the way, Peter, if you and Schuster and Durbin want to start your own credit card company, you can do it. You can run your own regulations. You can do whatever you want to. You compete with the other credit cards. And you said retailers have no choice. They do. They don't have to use credit cards.
You know, that's not a realistic choice for certainly the merchants that I speak to in Vermont. And that's because you and I, as consumers, more and more people are using plastic. That's just the way our economy functions. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It is a convenience for the individual, the consumer, and it is a benefit to the merchant because the merchant does get that secure transaction. So no dispute there. The question is whether there ought to be a price gouging allowed. You know, the price you charge, in my view, should be reasonable and fair. Retail merchants are governed by the law of competition. You know, you've got, as I mentioned, a gas station. That's a classic case. They're on one corner. They have a competitor on another corner or two. They're checking their competitors' prices all the time. That's the competition. You and I decide we're going to get gas where it's a penny less. But when the credit card companies have managed to get largely a monopoly, close to it, Visa and MasterCard, I mean, you tell me I can start a credit card company, the cost of entry, that's really, you know, is a practical matter, impossible. And they control something that's essential in commerce, credit. If they don't act responsibly, and by that I mean they don't price gouge, and again, highest charges in the world right here in the United States, then I do think that's a place where there has to be some regulation or antitrust activity.
We have a comment from Twitter who asks about Elizabeth Warren and says, Warren's new agency will monitor our transactions in addition to credit policy. What sort of privacies are guaranteed? Is that on the right course, or is that
Well, that's not my understanding.
Yeah, talk to us about what her role is and what.
Well, it's certainly not to monitor the personal activities of any of my transactions or yours. That's just not the role of government. Certainly not the role of the Consumer Protection Agency. The role of the Consumer Protection Agency, which she would be in charge of, is basically to make sure that the various financial products that are being offered are in plain English, so you and I can understand what it is we're buying, that they're not ripping people off, that they have rules that are fair and square, that basically you have a cop on the beat who's looking out from the perspective of protecting the consumer. I mean, we saw with this whole subprime mortgage crisis that these subprime issuers started developing these very complicated rules. And yes, it's true that the individual has responsibility, but also the government can regulate to make certain that they're not setting up these like debt instruments, these subprime mortgages that are impossible for people to A, understand or B, to repay. So I think it's very important to have a cop on the beat in the Consumer Protection Agency, and obviously Elizabeth Warren has a reputation as being a real strong advocate for consumers. At the end of the day, if you have clear rules that are fair to the consumer and fair to the financial companies, we're all going to be better off for that.
What do you think of the announcement that came out yesterday that Larry Summers is leaving the president's economic team?
Well, you know, it's typical around this time in the administration, after a couple of years, that many of the people who came in with the president go back to what their previous jobs were. And what Mr. Summers said is that he wants to get back to Harvard and hang on to his tenure. That's not a bad deal to have tenure at Harvard. So that's what he wants to do. Now, obviously, what it's going to do is give the president an opportunity to recalibrate his economic team. There are some folks who are leaving, Mr. Summers, Mr. Orszag, and the president's going to have an opportunity to basically do a reset here as he's replacing some of his top advisors.
Rhonda, Democrats line in Riverside, California. Good morning.
Good morning, y'all. I just wanted to say real quick, that guy yesterday who called Bernie Sanders a traitor, he must be a real dunce. I wanted to know if there's any way someone can stop the fees if they just want to close out their account and make payments. And also, please tell your fellow Dems to check the voting machines or they're going to continue losing. Did you all forget 2000 and 2004? It seems like that'd be a major factor on my mind, or else you're all going to lose, just like the last 2000 and 2004.
Well, thank you for that. If you just want to pay off your credit card, I take it if you want to, you can stop the fees, but if you have an outstanding balance, you're going to continue to have interest charges assessed against the outstanding balance. So that doesn't change, and in fact, if you have an outstanding balance, then obviously you or me has to pay the interest charges that are on that balance. And Bernie Sanders, of course, is the senator from Vermont. He's very popular up there, and appreciate your comments, and I'll let him know you were defending him.
In the Washington Post today, Dan Baltz asked the question, was Obama's town hall a wake-up call for the White House, talking about the meeting the president had on Monday where he took questions from the audience, and there were a number of people who said they're just really worried about the economy and they don't feel like the president has gotten the message across that things will get better. What message are you looking from the White House?
I don't call it a wake-up call because I think it's well known. You know, there's a disconnect here. You know, the report yesterday was that we're, quote, out of the recession and have been out of the recession since, I think, June of last year. Yet since June of last year, we've lost jobs. We haven't gained jobs. We've lost jobs. So if you don't have a job, or you're hanging on by your fingernails to the job you have, or you have a kid who's graduating high school or college and they're going into a very unforgiving and unwelcoming job market, then your apprehension about the economy is real. And it's a very tough approach here for the White House, because on the one hand, let's be fair to President Obama, he inherited a mess. I mean, this collapse in the financial sector and the loss of jobs, all of that happened in the Bush administration. And it's the cleanup that is the responsibility of the Obama administration. But if you're a person like some of those folks that spoke to the president at the town hall meeting,